had our critical thinking for Christians class last night, and as usual, had a really good time, a lot of interesting conversation, and when the time was up, we were still going on, but we called it quits and left when we were supposed to. Last night, we talked about authority, valid sources for knowledge and for getting ideas. How do we know what a valid source is? How do we root out weak sources? And it was an interesting talk, especially with things in the news that just dovetailed with our class last night. All the news just seems made for critical thinking. So I'm going to give you a little recap of last night's talk about our discussion time about how to know a good source from a bad source. Now, my daughter tells me that when I start doing something like this, and I have a point 1, point 2, point 3, that I need to get a whiteboard and write it up on the whiteboard, and so you can see it and not forget it, but I can't find any whiteboards. So I'm going to try to stay with 3 points. So just remember 1, 2, 3. 1, a good source of research, a good source of authority is someone that has an expertise in the field. I can hear people saying, well, duh. But it's not as simple as what it seems like, because there are areas, we go to people that are intelligent, that are highly educated, and we think they know everything. We might go to a medical doctor and ask questions about our car. Well, what does a medical doctor necessarily know about our car, unless the person really has studied cars? Or a few years ago, there was a politician that wanted to earn some votes, and so he got a TV movie action hero to stand up for him and to endorse him. That's nice that that person wanted to endorse this politician, but what is there in being a movie action hero that gives you knowledge of politics or the economy? But it must have been helpful, because in that particular race, the opponent on the other side went out and got themselves a movie action hero to endorse them. And so these people were running for this political office, and each one of them had a celebrity supporting them. That doesn't mean the celebrity knows what they're talking about. Everybody's not trained in the same field. And one thing that I've seen happen a lot of times is that if someone says something unpopular and they have some research behind them, then an opposing point of view will go out and get somebody with some sort of a degree that sounds really good, and they will come in and they will challenge that and give another opinion. Christina, I am so excited. I found a whiteboard. I don't have any markers to use. So everybody will just have to remember. Point number 2. When looking for an authority or researching or studying about something, the best authorities not only know what they're talking about, but they don't have a horse in the race. That is, they're not partisan. They have an open mind to study it. Now, for years, I've taught several classes of freshmen and sophomores, and one of my classes is logic and critical thinking. One of my classes is ethics. We deal with some of the touchiest issues that people fight about, and I split my students up into small teams and send them out as research groups. And, we have a problem with good, solid research when I send my students out. Because on many of the areas that we look at, we can find studies, and the study seems to back up the point of view of the person that did the study. I mean, they just say it in such a way that and given in such a way, and slant the study in such a way, and it's not always on purpose. Sometimes something catches a person's eyes, it kind of backs up what they already their preconceived ideas, and it backs up a bias they have, and so they invest a little more study into it, and lo and behold, they proof text. They prove their own point of view. Obviously, you can see a problem in that. Now, sometimes it's hard to find studies that are not already from a biased perspective. If you go to anything on the internet that says .com or .org or something like that, you've got a pretty good likelihood that you're just backing up a bias that's already there. If you go on social media, even if you don't know your bias, social media knows your bias, and it's going to feed stuff to you that backs up your bias. Often, you have better luck with something that ends with edu, an educational link. But that's not guaranteed to be without bias. And you often have a better view, a better chance of good, solid data if you go into something .gov, a government site. That's not guaranteed, but often it has a solider view. Sometimes you can't avoid bias because nobody's doing research, and you just have to take what you've got, but always keep in mind the possibility that you could be wrong, the possibility that you could be sucked into this person's bias. Last night, I brought a chart of social media, and on the chart of social media, it said, this is moderate or in the middle and balanced news reporting. This is leans toward the political left. This leans toward the political right. This is garbage, way over extreme left. This is garbage, extreme right. And then most of the news places it has listed on that. And I brought that and showed it to everyone, and we talked about it a little while. And then I asked, we know, everybody knows that Fox leans more to the right of CNN. The question is CNN toward the middle and Fox over to the extreme right, or is Fox over toward the middle and CNN toward the left, or are they both just slightly, one leans to the right, one leans to the left? Because see, the chart of whether something is left or right, that's fairly easy to discern. How far it is, that tells us a lot more about the person that made the chart than it does about CNN or Fox or any other news organization. And the chart that we look at, well, actually last night we had this long discussion about the chart. And then I gave another chart, and then another chart, and I think I gave 5 or 6 charts that had the same news organizations that were slanted a little this way or that way. Why? Because they were made by different people. They had different points of view that were backing up their points of view. And then we said, so which chart seems most realistic? But that was a trick question, because the chart that seems the most realistic is oftentimes the chart that backs up the bias that the viewer, that you have to start with. So even in some of these studies, if there's a bias that goes into it, or you're looking for a bias, even if it's unintentionally, unconsciously, you find what you look for. Point 3 is a good, solid, reputable source of knowledge, of research, will not become defensive if you question their research, their methods. What they will probably do is they will explain to you, probably maybe in a long dialogue, what researchers they used, the different ideas they kicked out, the different ideas they accepted, but they won't feel defensive. So never feel intimidated or never feel like you shouldn't, when you're asking for sources, you shouldn't ask questions. You shouldn't ask why, but what if? Always? Are you sure what this person said that? Those kinds of questions, those will not intimidate a person that knows what they're talking about and is seriously looking for truth. They will intimidate people that are or make people defensive, people that do have a horse in the race and really aren't there to look for truth. They're into the argument to look for victory. They're into the argument to look to win. But that's not how we find truth. Now, if you're in it to win, and if they're in it to win, and you get defensive, and they get defensive, you're not even in an argument anymore. If you remember the first day we started this critical thinking for Christians class, we separated the difference between a real, true, valid argument and just two people that are getting red or hot around the collar, red in the face, and arguing to be arguing. And if two are both defensive and have to win, you're not in a real argument. You're arguing with someone. Okay? Don't do that. You won't win. They won't win. And the people that have to listen to you won't win. A lot of people dehumanize and see the other side of an argument, of a discussion, as the enemy, or as the villains that's causing this whole world to go to pot in the first place. But you don't have to be like that. You can see them as flesh and blood people with the same joys and sorrows that you have, looking for the same kinds of answers and maybe coming up with different answers. You can question them, enter a discussion, share with them what views have helped you. You're not betraying your faith, and you're not betraying your political party or whatever it is if you take time to try to understand what your opponent is thinking and from their point of view. Well, we have just 2 weeks, maybe 3 to go with this study. We're winding down quickly. You have 2 days, 3 days, a few to go between now and Sunday, when we come back to worship with each other once again. And during that time, it's likely that you're going to bump into somebody that doesn't agree with all of your views. And when you do, be ready. Know why you believe what you believe. Treat them like humans. May God bless you and increase your footprint in the world around us as you share God's grace with the people you bump into. It's a world that needs grace, and you are a grace giver.